Welcome to the podcast, Hilary Turner.
Thank you for having me, Lizzie Zweigart, or Liz. Sorry, Dr. Liz Zweigart. I forget myself sometimes.
So, the question I ask everyone, how do we know each other?
How do we know each other, I think, is a three-pronged question. First prong. A couple decades ago, we won't say exactly what year, you moved into Weiss College, the dorm I lived in at Rice University. And to understand what dorm life is like at Rice, you have to understand the various colleges or dorms are like great big, happy, and occasionally dysfunctional families. So everyone meets everyone living there eventually. So Lizzie and I, of course, met each other for the first time probably back then. I have no idea what you thought of me, Lizzie. I was going through it. But we knew of each other's existence and had exchanged a few words. Prong two, I crashed your wedding several years later as Sarah Petrie's +1. So yeah, I was at your wedding. Was that 2003 or 2004?
It was 2002.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
You're telling me.
2002. Yeah, I was Sarah's +1. I was her date to the wedding, and I had a lovely time, although I knew, very few people. And I recall I got a bit tipsy chatting with a nun who's related to you somehow. And then prong three, the biggest prong, is getting to know each other in 2016 when I was in my MBA program at Rice through our running habit. I remember I was going through a bit of a mental health slump fall semester of my second year of the program and posted on the socials about that. And you were still on the socials at that point, and you invited me to tackle the Rice 3-mile jogging path with you. And that was really the true beginning of our beautiful friendship, I think.
I would agree. And it's funny, I actually screenshotted that Facebook message, and I've had it as a picture in my favorites for years because it is such this perfect encapsulation of the start of our friendship, with you saying, I want to do this thing. You had posted about how you wanted to try the track. And I said, well, I do it every Saturday. Let's go. And you initially said, I won't be able to complete it. I don't want to slow you down. And my thought was like, let's just get out there and see what happens, right? Let's just go into this with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And you ran the whole thing.
I did, with much encouragement.
You did. But I think that when I think about our friendship, particularly in the last, goodness gracious, almost decade, I think about how we have just been kind of constant encouragers for each other. And you're right. I don't recall initially how we met at Weiss. I know that we knew each other because it was just too small not to.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that you were friends with people who also were kind of in my friend circle, Joe, Sarah, others. And I just remember thinking you were just so cool. You had this vibe. You were just you were one of the cool kids. And I was not a particularly cool kid. Although I will say when I got to Rice, it's sort of like where all the nerds go to elect their homecoming court. So it's the most popular I've ever been in my life. So it was amazing. It was amazing from that perspective. So I thought you were one of the supremely cool kids, which again is sort of you're the coolest of the nerds, but still, that's
going to be my official title, I think. Let's see.
I think it needs to be.
Coolest of the nerds.
I think it needs to be.
But definitely a nerd.
For sure. And then I remember you being at my wedding, and I just thought that was marvelous. And I have this great picture of you and Sarah together at my wedding, and it was lovely to be able to reach back after you and I reconnected and just see that memory and see you there at one of the most important days of my life. And
Yeah.
then now I think about how many miles you and I have covered together because that run was not the end of it. In fact, it was just the beginning. I don't even know how many races we've done together.
I think we've done like a dozen, maybe half marathons.
It sounds about right. And I think, in our own way, we did become influencers. I mean, again, similar to our popularity at Rice.
We had a hashtag.
Exactly. I mean, we clearly influencers. Again, maybe not the largest of ponds,
Maybe not. Maybe
maybe
not.
not,
Hmm.
but you know,
Price loop influencers. Uh, but I feel like because we ran, decently long distances in training for these races and we chatted the whole time, like we got to know each other like more quickly and in a way that is hard to get to know someone normally, you know? We just had this enforced bonding time driven by our running obsession.
I think that that's actually a really important point because typically you you become bonded when you go through some sort of like intense ordeal together. And I would certainly say that do you remember we ran 12 miles. It was like a Saturday in January and it was like 21 degrees Fahrenheit when we started
And the
and we
water fountains were frozen?
the water fountains were frozen.
Oh,
And but we were undeterred because we had told our adoring public, again, influencers, we had told our adoring public we were going to do this. And I think one of the things I love most about us is that neither one of us can out-stubborn the other.
that is so true. Like, neither one of us is going to back down if the other one's still going, you know?
Exactly. And so it's like, no, I'm going to Scott of the Antarctic first. That might be too soon.
Mm-hmm.
But, we would just keep going, and I think about so many races where we would get to, like, the pointy end of 13.1 miles,
Yeah.
and both of us are just like, "We are ready for this to be over," but
Yep.
we're not gonna say it because
Where's the bloody turnaround?
that was in Edinburgh. That was so amazing. Edinburgh was a ton of fun. So we've done Edinburgh together. We did
Lynn?
Dublin. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed Dublin.
We've done less
I
scenic places like the
the
Woodlands
what? Oh, that
in
was
Austin.
great. Austin. Those hills just about killed me.
We should have stuck to the 3M, or as it's now called, the Austin International Half.
Yes, downhill to downtown.
They lie about that last little hill.
They do. No, they don't tell you about that till the very end, till you're running up toward the Capitol and you're like, what is this incline? I do not understand this witchcraft. And other than that, though, it's actually quite a pleasant course.
Mhm.
But that was a significant downside.
Yeah. Did we go anywhere else? I don't seem to remember that we haven't
I'm
done.
trying to remember because we got COVID interrupted.
We did Galveston like twice, I want to say.
Yeah, we did like 2 or 3 of the Diva runs too, and those were all in Galveston. I think we only did the Galveston half once, but I think I have at least 3 hot pink shirts,
Oh yeah, Diva.
Diva. And those were fun because they would hand you tutus.
Yeah, and tiaras.
Of course, de rigueur.
De rigueur. Yeah, I know. So we had like a glorious year of much running and chatting. And then I was up in Boston for a job for a year and it was very sad and I missed my Lizzie and I had to run along the Esplanade by myself.
And I continued to do the rice loop alone, just churning out the miles. But somehow we have managed to sustain our friendship despite living not in the same city anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I'm in Austin. You're down there in Houston, obviously. And I attribute that to some version of our mutual stubbornness also, because I think we are both like tenacious when we find a good friend. And I think we both, at different times and in different ways, put in the work to maintain a friendship over the distance, which not everyone will do.
I agree. And, it's interesting to me. One, there is so much absolutely deserved bad press that social media receives. And it's for extremely good reasons. And at the same time, I have to say, if it wasn't for Facebook, we would not have gotten to be friends now at this stage in our lives. So I'm really grateful that we were able to make that connection. And I'm glad that Facebook at the time was a place where that fostered that.
I don't think if I was in business school today and you in Houston today and we didn't know each other really well, I don't think like that opportunity would have arisen because like I know you issue socials largely. I'm still on there, but getting less out of it. Yeah, I don't think if we had time traveled that situation forward, I don't think we would have become friends like if we met now.
I think that's absolutely true. It was sort of, we lucked out that there was this window in time for us to make this really profound reconnection. And as I think more about it, it really strikes me as even more incredible because it is hard to make friends in your 40s or late 30s, as the case may have been when we started.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's hard. Like, it's one thing to make friends in college when you are surrounded by fairly like minded folks who are all in the sort of same generational cohort. And then what I found is that after graduation, your choices, maybe you make friends at work. Maybe you have a religious practice and you make friends at your house of worship. Or in my case, you trust your children to go find really cool friends who have even better parents. And then you make friends with your children's friends' parents. But it's really, really hard to make meaningful relationships in adulthood. And so it's another reason that I feel that in addition to our mutual stubbornness, we've also held on to each other because a good friend is hard to find at any age, but particularly as you get older.
hmm Yeah, and I think it also goes to show like it's helpful to be open-minded. Like our day-to-day lives are very different. You have a longtime husband, you have two amazing daughters. You used to work for PwC, now you're doing all this cool entrepreneurial stuff and consulting psychology stuff. I, on the other hand, am a divorced woman of a certain age who is single and does not have kids, and it is largely pursuing library school right now. So I'm all in on grad school, and so I'm in school, you're working, you have kids, I don't, you have a husband, I don't. Like, we're different people, it's not like we met in a mom group. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, we didn't, you know, I could see if it hadn't been for sort of the synchronicity, we wouldn't have come across each other.
Yeah, and finding something so specific as distance running. And at the time, I would say you didn't even know you were going to be signing up for distance running. Although, of the two of us, you are the only one to have actually completed a full marathon.
Yeah, that was back in 2001 and when I lived in New York City. I turned to running. It was totally alien to me. I was never an athletic child. My family could tell you. My sisters did soccer. I read books. And I had gotten out of a tough living situation, and I was kind of trying to turn things around for myself. And I was in Grand Central Station, and I saw this like sign just up on one of the signboards for marathon coaching for like beginners through USA Fit was the organization, and they're still around, and they have like city fits now, like Austin Fit and stuff like that. But I was like, I mean, I can run a mile. I'm a beginner. Why not check it out? And so I was very brave, and I went to this meeting where I knew no one over on the Hudson River, Lower Hudson, and yeah, met my running coach, Tim Haft, there, and trained for the Chicago 2001 marathon, and somehow stuck with it. But afterwards, was I so burned out, and I was like, I'm never gonna run again.
Little did you know.
Little did I know. I just had to wait like a decade or so. Yeah. So running has definitely been really helpful for my physical and mental well-being and for making a good friend, of course. Yeah, you just never know what things are going to lead to. I was in a lecture. I can't remember if this was for school. Oh, no, it might have been someone I was interviewing for a newsletter article in one of my communications jobs. And they said, you never know when like a short-term opportunity is going to have a long-term consequence or like change your life in a major way. And I have found that to be true. You never know.
I found that to be really true too. And I think it's one of the reasons why I just say yes to so many things when I am invited to go someplace that's, it's something that I would not have thought to do, or I'm introduced to someone who I don't know that I would have sought out in the first place, but someone makes a connection for me and says, I think you should have a chat to this person. I think you'd enjoy knowing each other. And it's just one of those things to me where it's like, well, go with the spirit of curiosity and see what happens. And not everything is for me. I'm certainly not for everyone. And on balance, I found that some of the best things that I've ever had happen are things that I've just sort of spontaneously said yes to, all the way from how I met my husband
Mhm.
to how I got into the work that I'm doing now. It's being open, as you said, and saying yes to opportunity.
And that's so funny because I've been doing the same in my MSLS program at University of North Texas. I in my mind, like I sort of think of it as approaching higher education like an MBA student would. Like when I was an MBA student, we were coached on networking, like drilled on it really, and I appreciated that because I was not good at networking at the time. And also just like exploring all possible opportunities that might enhance kind of your hireability or your knowledge of a subject. And so that's still inside me, like it hibernated, but when I got to library school, like I approached school as like, I love to learn and I love libraries and I wanted to learn about working in libraries, obviously, but I do want to get a job when I graduate. So I sort of approached it from a more MBA point of view in that sense, in that I did a lot of kind of cold emailing and networking, and had informational chats with tons of librarians, and got to hear great stories, great insights. And one of the folks I reached out to is actually now my practicum supervisor for my 120-hour practicum that I need to complete to graduate. And she's a business librarian at Georgetown University. And if I hadn't put myself out there, I would never have had the initial conversations. So it's kind of like returning again to that idea of like a short-term thing, like an information chat you have set up to Zoom with someone, has turned into like something a little bigger where I'm spending this semester working with her closely. You just never know.
And I see that as such an evolution for you and this really amazing growth that you've experienced because it is well known how much you hate being in an Uber with me.
You talk to them too much.
We get out of the Uber and we have the driver's entire life story, and we possibly even found like a connection for them, found somebody for them to talk to, or been able to suggest something that they hadn't thought of that was solving a problem that they were facing. You just never know.
I can picture a very specific post brunch, maybe had a few mimosas, Uber ride home, and I wanted to sink into the floor of the car. And you were just chatting away, chatting away.
I
Times change.
I have never met a stranger.
You never have.
No. But I
Yeah.
will say, like, other times you've wanted to sort of disappear into the ground were when we would run around Rice Loop and I would insist on like cheerfully greeting everybody and wishing them a good morning.
Yes. Yes, that was a lot, Lizzie. I mean, coming from like a place of introversion and maybe a touch of cynicism, I just found it a lot. But I stuck with you, and that's a testament to our friendship, I think.
Oh, well, you're about to say that's a testament to me and as in you. And you would
Maybe.
absolutely be right. You'd absolutely be right. But I do wonder about that, about introvert plus extrovert being friends and what they like what do you learn from the other? Because I absolutely feel like I have learned from you as an introvert because I spent most of my life, I mean, I would say I spent pretty much my whole life up until my very early 40s as someone who hated being alone
Mhm.
because I had to manage my own thoughts and I had to manage what was happening in my head and my brain until I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and my therapist started giving me the tools to make sense of what that diagnosis meant and started helping me develop the toolkit to manage it in real time. I could not bear to be left alone with my thoughts because the intrusive thoughts were always lurking.
Mhm.
And as long as I kept that space filled, it was harder and harder for them to take hold and then become obsessions, which I then compulsively acted on.
Mhm.
So I didn't have the understanding of what was happening with me to be able to really make sense of why it was that being on my own never felt recharging. And when people would describe, particularly my husband, who is an introvert and is capable of being quite gregarious, although he finds it exhausting, he finds ways to recharge when he is on his own and when he is in very small groups of close friends. And I just never understood how that was possible. And I really got a lot from you in terms of how you have managed to find time where you are alone, but not necessarily lonely, but you're able to just give space to yourself and enjoy that space and find it energizing. And this is the first time in my life that I can say that that's even vaguely true for me, that I've found this way of being by myself without feeling like I'm in some sort of pit of loneliness, but I'm by myself and I am getting my energy restored. And so that's something that's really in the last 10 years entirely new to me.
That's fantastic. It's interesting to me because I've almost had kind of a slightly opposite evolution in that now that I have kind of discovered my people, librarians and researchers and information professionals, like I am not shy around them. I am, I might be seen as extroverted in those situations, even if it's a large crowd of people. Like I went to the American Library Association annual conference in Philly in June, and that's 10,000 librarians essentially. So a lot. And like I did fine. I didn't melt down. Like every conversation I had was delightful, you know? So I think there's a lot to be said for finding kind of your environment that works for you.
So I want to hear more about the librarians that you found as your people because you've had a really interesting career. Now, when I sit and look at all of the different things you've done, to me, the dots all of a sudden connect and make a ton of sense as to why you're pursuing the MSLS, your Master's of Science in Library Sciences. And it all comes together, and granted, that's the purpose of like, that's the benefit of hindsight.
Sure.
But I'm curious from your perspective, how does it feel like the pieces have come together now?
Well, I had a, a closer hit with my first career, which was in the publishing editing business. So I was an English major and a psych double major, and I didn't think I was going to go the psychologist route. So I was like, okay, I'm an English major. What can I do? Work in publishing. Obviously, I'll work in publishing. My family lived in Connecticut, about an hour and a half outside of New York City. So after the summer, after my senior year, I moved back up and I stayed with my family for a bit, and I applied to, like, the barest entry level publishing jobs. So like production assistant, editorial assistant, things like that. And I think my first job was for a scientific journal publisher, Wiley, and I think I got paid $27,000 a year. And this was in New York City. So I was eating a lot of cereal, but I was having a good time. I think my favorite publishing job was at Penguin like a year or so later, where I was the production editor for like 12 to 15 new titles a month. And I got to kind of manage that for the mystery imprint, Berkeley Prime Crime, and the sci-fi and fantasy, which was Ace. I don't know if they're the same still. And that was pretty amazing. And if I hadn't run out of money on a publishing salary in New York, I might have like gone the distance with that. And I wish I would have thought from there, I like books, maybe libraries. And I could have saved myself like 25 years, but instead, I had other ideas. I thought I might go to law school. That didn't really pan out. I ran out of money, moved back to Texas, and just took a series of different types of jobs. I was at UT Austin for a long time, like 2006 to 2010 or 11, managing a front desk of an advising office. So from there, I kind of got like the experience of interacting with the public and the customers / students, parents, and faculty, which was very different from my publishing background, where I, believe it or not, actually had my own office with a door that shut and would just have my head down, be like editing manuscripts and checking project timetables and, kind of a more introverted job. And then dealing with, everyone who comes through the door at UT was like totally different. And it was a good job for me, and I really loved my coworkers so much, like Suzanne, Amy, and Barbara, who are fantastic. But eventually I decided I had it in my head, girl, you need to make some money. So I was like, what do people who want to make money do? They go to business school. And that led me to the MBA portion of my career. I spent a lot of that, after getting a degree, I spent a lot of that time in tech marketing and content creation. And I learned a lot, like, about competitive intelligence, about leading launches, about marketing campaigns. But for me, like, working in corporate like that was a bit of like a square peg in a round hole situation. I kept trying to make those types of jobs work, and they kept just, like, really bringing out my anxiety and panic. And I had to finally say I need to do something different, and that's when I think my sister and my therapist both mentioned librarianship, and I thought about it a lot, and it just made sense, like, it was a way to help people without kind of the deep emotional fraughtness of, like, being a counselor. So it's a way to help people. It's a way to be around books, although less and less as things come online. And it was a way to indulge in my curiosity. I've always loved research. So it just kind of came together for me later in midlife, but better late than never, right?
And there was someone else for whom it all came together late into midlife. And as you were describing your journey to librarianship, I thought of the third character, if you will, in our relationship, and that is J.B. Fletcher.
Oh, that's right. Murder, She Wrote.
I feel like we would be completely remiss if we did not discuss our mutual love of Murder, She Wrote, obviously the Golden Girls. But let's stick with JB for a second,
Yeah, sure.
because after her husband passes, she, English teacher, dusts off this manuscript that she had started but never finished, completes it, and becomes an absolute blockbuster best-selling author, and then shockingly resident of the town in America with the highest per capita murder rate.
Cabot Cove.
And as I think about this, it strikes me you and Jessica have so many points of resonance with each other.
I also like to interfere in situations that people don't really want me interfering in, I feel. I always want to give advice.
I would say that your advice on balance is quite good. And I would also say that a lot of your advice is also a form of cheerleading.
That's true. Upbeat.
Yeah. And I would also say we would be remiss if we're going to talk about advice and cheerleading. We would be really remiss if we didn't also mention your mom.
Oh, I didn't know where you were taking that. I thought maybe your daughter's dance team.
No, I did not anticipate becoming a cheer mom, yet here we are.
You know, my mom was a cheer mom with no cheerleader. Well, actually, Laura, the trader, was a cheerleader when she was young. But as a whole, my mom was not a cheer mom, but she was a cheerleader. And I think, like, that's something, until she passed in 2023, that's something that kind of got me through those MBA jobs, was like talking to her, confiding in her, and getting advice and pep talks, like sometimes multiple times a week, that I could do the job, that I was competent, like that nothing was wrong and I didn't need to panic. And she's done that for all three of her daughters in different ways. I mean, no one's perfect, and she was not a saint, but she was just, I would say, had a really high EQ, and her work with Goodwill Industries rehabilitation programs in New York City just, I think, further developed her empathy and understanding of people going through something different than she might be going through. And she didn't have anxiety like I did and do, but she could meet me on ground where we could have a conversation about it, and she could provide helpful advice. And I definitely miss that a lot, miss her a lot, and I often try to think of, like, what advice she would give in a certain situation. And it's so hard. I mean, it's been 2 years, and I feel like her voice is a little further away. So it's hard to recapture that.
I'm really grateful that I got to meet your mom the handful of times that I did.
She loves
And
you.
I loved your mom and that she was such a cheerleader of yours and mine.
Mhm.
And I mean, if we posted something, she was the first like in there. She was first in with the comment. What I appreciated about your mom was how much she loved you, how proud she was of you, how she encouraged and loved your friends. And if there was somebody who was important to you, they were important to your mother because they were important to you.
I think she
And
secretly loved when we would travel for races because she got to travel vicariously. She loved to travel.
she obviously did. And I will say that the thing that I am sad we missed out on was being able to do a running trip with her. I know we had
Me too.
talked about it, and it was right after we started chatting about it that she became ill.
Mhm.
And I am just so appreciative, though, of the time that I did get to spend with her and get to know her, because I think it really also provided a lot of insight into you. Because
Mhm.
you are I think you are so much like your mom in the way that despite what you highlighted earlier about a little cynicism and perhaps a little maybe Jane Austen-esque sarcasm, you really do try so hard to find good in people.
Mhm.
You absolutely stick with your friends. You are a cheerleader. You are incredibly empathetic. And I think you look to love people. And that's kind of when I think about your mom, that's what I think about. I think about someone who just looked to find a way to love everybody that she came across and find something about them to love. And I think that's something that a lot of us really struggle with because you got to give sometimes a whole lot of time and you've got to have a lot of patience because some folks will really try your patience before you find the thing in them that is delightful and surprising. And I
Mhm.
feel like your mom had that level of patience to see what somebody had within them that I think is a really important lesson for the rest of us.
Yeah, I would agree, and I appreciate you kind of bringing that up and highlighting that about mom. I know, like, she had a lot of heart, especially for her clients at Goodwill and, a population dealing with different challenges, like maybe a disability, either physical or mental, maybe housing insecurity or even food insecurity. But she worked to understand what the genuine problems were and to try to be as is it Mr. Rogers who said look for the helpers? I
Yes.
feel like it's him.
Yeah.
She was definitely one of the helpers, and I that's something I always admired about her. She didn't just complain, or she rarely complained, I should say. She just dug in, you know?
Yeah. So, the Golden Girls.
Oh, the Golden Girls. Yeah, I've still been watching a couple episodes every couple days, and some of it aged extremely poorly, but so much of it is still so funny. And like in like almost every episode, cheesecake and ice cream is eaten to solve a problem. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. You know, gotta do what you gotta do, girls. Yeah, I've been reading behind the scenes stuff about it, and if I follow a Golden Girls Instagram account.
So, what episodes stick out in your mind? Which ones do you remember?
I don't know. It's all a little bit of a hazy blur. I'm in season 4 now, so some things. I mean, they make some off-color jokes, but they were dealing with things that were current issues in the late '80s, and one episode that was really touching was when basically the younger set of 3 Golden Girls were just kind of having a lazy day around cheesecake or whatever on the kitchen table, and Sophia says she's going out to get a tangerine because she does this every morning. She gets a tangerine. And Dorothy's like, Mom needs something to engage her. I mean, I just feel like she's not interested in life. And then the episode follows Sophia, and she leads a marching band on the seafront. And she's a sunshine lady at the hospital, like a volunteer. And at the end of toward the end of the episode, there's a little boy who, it's not said explicitly, but it's clearly indicated he has AIDS, which was new and especially scary then. And she gives him the nectarine and encourages him to eat it. And apparently this is something she does every day. And I thought it was such a touching episode because it just shows, like, well, how much life there is in Sophia. She's an octogenarian in the show, and it shows her heart for people, and, it doesn't shy away from addressing AIDS, in its oblique way.
So the episode you highlighted essentially highlights your personality.
I don't know.
You engage with really hard things. And going into librarianship now at a time when there is an incredible amount of pressure on libraries, on research, on science. I mean, like, you are going into an area that's incredibly important because you're helping to preserve and defend human knowledge. And all of that knowledge has been hard won.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do so much that, you're not necessarily going to see from the outside. And one of the things I loved about your retelling of that episode, because I remember the episode vividly,
Mm-hmm.
was just that Sophia does it in her own way.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about you, you have done all of this your way. And you haven't taken the most direct route to get to where you are. And the things you've experimented with as a professional, the things you've tried your hand at personally. I mean, you have gone forward with curiosity and a lot of bravery, and you've done it your way. And I think that there is something so important and valuable in being able to say where you are now, I have earned my way to this place. Right? You've really been through a lot. And here you are on the other side, and you're still calling the shots for yourself. And I think that's something that what you just described in that episode kind of exemplifies for me.
That is deep, man, and I should have expected no less from you, Lizzie. I appreciate that. That'll give me another way to think about myself when I'm having a hard day too. So appreciate it.
Well, and the one that I think we always think about when we're having a tough day is Orson.
Oh, Orson, he's lying here in the room. He's by the window. I think if he opens one eye, he can keep an eye on the neighborhood. So that satisfies him and reminds him he's a little guy in charge. Yeah, we love Orson. Lizzie has had some quality time with Orson since I adopted him. It's been almost 1 year, Lizzie.
Really?
Yeah. So I got him from a great rescue organization in Leander, Texas, called Texas Humane Heroes. And again, social media, they posted a picture and a brief description online, and I kind of fell in love, but I was like a little leery. So I went out to meet him, and he just seemed right, He's a little scrappy, 13-pound guy, and I had his DNA done because, of course, and his primary DNA components are small poodle and chihuahua, so I call him a choodle. And he's just brought a lot of happiness and joy to me over the past year. But I will say I kind of like had the kid gloves on with him at first because I wasn't sure like would he really would I keep him, would he fit into my life? Like, I hadn't owned a dog by myself ever, just one with my ex-husband. So I just didn't know if I was up to the challenge. But, he's pretty irresistible and, he's such a good boy that here it is a year later and he's firmly ensconced.
He's the best boy. And the eyeliner.
Yeah, he looks like he's wearing eyeliner, so he's a little emo looking, but his personality is not terribly emo. I would describe it as effervescent.
He's my kind of dog.
Well, if you guys ever get another dog, I'm just saying.
Work in progress.
I understand. I won't pressure you.
So, Hilary, who do you want to be talking to right now?
Well, a couple different types of people or people in different situations. From kind of a more LinkedIn and career perspective, I want to talk to all kinds of information professionals, wherever you ended up working. Like if you went to library or information school, I would really love to hear from you, kind of what your career path was and what you ultimately found that you enjoyed doing the most in that career. As I roll further into my second and final year of this program, I'll be applying to academic library jobs starting as early as like early spring semester. So this is very much on my mind. I'm happy to also share my experience with being a current student in an MSLS program and with kind of, the technologies that have emerged more recently. AI is on every librarian's lips, and I have been educating myself as much as possible about that, so I'm always happy to talk about that as well. And then, in an entirely different vein, I would love to talk to people who are middle-aged, 40-somethings, who have found a dear new friend, like, at this time in their life, essentially. I love my friends and I'm always looking to meet new friends and I'm not always sure how to go about that. I feel like Lizzie kind of fell into my lap. So I'd love to hear if you're 30s or 40s or beyond and you've made a good friend, like not just fresh out of college, like in your more established period of your life. I would love to hear that story.
I love that. I'm really glad that in this more established period of our lives, we got to be friends because it's been awesome. And I still think the best is yet to come.
I feel super lucky that we're friends, Lizzie. You are never ever boring. I never know what to expect from you, but it's always something good.
Thanks, friend. I love you.
Love you too.